Right.
Yeah. Well, let me just continue this concept by sharing another visual, and this is an easier visual for everybody to understand. You know that Indiana Jones movie where there's the bridge and he has to run across the bridge and he's being chased on one side and the bridge is like falling apart, right? Well, think of the rungs on that bridge, right, as the tactics, right? The strategy is the bridge. Some of those tactics
They're going to be a little
are worth trying, but they don't work. Some of them are solid and will help him advance across the bridge. That's how I like to think about it in terms of that squiggly line is also that bridge, right? Some things are going to work, some things are not. Some things are precarious but get us where we need to go, and some we should never even bother touching in the first place. But as long as we're looking at those tactics in the context of the bigger strategy, they're worth considering.
Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by David Baer. Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, Matt. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
So, David, you are a creative partner and co-founder of the Prepared Group. If I can pronounce it.
And you were concerned about pronouncing my name incorrectly, but a simple word like prepared. Come on, let's pretend, audience, that he didn't say that, and we'll just have him start over again. Go ahead, Matt.
No, it's good. We'll keep this in. It's a podcast. We're gonna make it fun. Yeah, actually, it's my chicken scratch over here. I have written notes on an iPad.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. Anyway, you are a veteran. I saw this from your bio. He is for indirect response marketing. He has done a lot. I was going to say
I've never served in the U.S. military, but I am a veteran of direct response marketing.
Yes. You've done Facebook stuff. You've had an agency doing Facebook ads. You've done dozens of online courses. You've done webinars. You've done a lot of stuff, helping businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs do better, become more efficient and do bigger things. Is that it in a nutshell? Does that work?
That is it in a nutshell. It doesn't, if somebody were to meet me on the street and ask me to talk about myself, I don't think I would mention any of what you just said.
Okay. What would you say?
Because what you left out are all of the things that I celebrate about my life far more than any of those things, which is I'm a wine geek and a theater geek.
Ah.
And those happen to be, part of my professional timeline as well.
Okay, so explain. So wine.
Yes.
Let's start there. Why are you a wine geek?
I used to take cooking classes, just recreationally, and I found, and I'm a foodie and love cooking, but when I was taking classes, the thing that I discovered about that process that I cared more about than anything else was pairing the food with wine.
Oh.
And it took me down a really, really, really deep rabbit hole. So before I was in the wine industry, and we'll backtrack a little bit more in a moment, I actually was a theater presenter, and I ran a theater complex. And so I ran events professionally as a career, right? We did something around 1,200, 1,300 events a year in my 5 theater complex that I managed. And at some point I wanted to get out of that business, and I randomly faxed this is a while ago, faxed my resume off to wine importers and wine distributors on a Saturday afternoon. Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, I had 3 messages on my answering machine, right? So again, it was a while ago. Mm-hmm. And people who wanted to interview me, because even though I had no experience in the wine business, or at that point, I was
Yeah.
pretty knowledgeable about wine. Like I'm a nerd when it comes to silly wine facts. Um, in the wine business, marketing is primarily done, B2B marketing through events, through big trade shows, big tastings.
Oh.
And there was something on my resume that said to these people, wow, this guy knows how to host events and run big trade shows. Let's talk to him. So that's how I got into the wine business.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, that's kind of like some synergy there going on.
Yep.
Like, this guy. Wait a minute. Awesome. Yeah, well, okay. So let's bookmark that. So the first thing we do when we have somebody on this podcast is we talk about their journey, and you just shared a snippet of it. But let's rewind a little bit more. Like, what is your origin story? Like, how did you get into entrepreneurship or running that theater and all that? How did you get started? What inspired you? Who inspired you to do all the things you did that led up to this moment where you're doing amazing stuff in the world? With that, I hand it to you.
Wow, who inspired me? That brings me back like to my junior high or high school days, and I had teachers who were very much instrumental in instrumental is an interesting word here because they got me into the arts, and I loved participating as a performer in the arts. I was the lead in the musical in junior high school, and then I became the president of the drama club in high school. But what I discovered out of that experience was I was much more interested in the managing the process and running the production. And so I became a stage manager and worked professionally as a stage manager. And that involved a lot of shepherding a project, right? Project management, dealing with personalities and psychology of communication, and a lot of the things that have been present in my professional life ever since that first set of gigs as a stage manager. So I worked in the theater industry, in the classical music industry. I worked at Lincoln Center for New York City Opera, and then I ended up running a giant performing arts center owned by the state of New York for 8.5 years.
Wow.
That's what led up to that then transition into the wine business,
right?
Which ultimately moved me out here to Oregon, where you may or may not know we produce wine, and so I was in the wine business here in Oregon until such time as my employer imploded. The company went out of business, and that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. The first time that I was not in an employed role and had to figure out what the heck do I do, and made the classic stumbles that every new entrepreneur makes: failed, and then eventually found success.
Interesting. Yeah, sometimes life hands you lemons and you become an entrepreneur.
Yep.
That's how it works.
True.
Right? So yeah, that's interesting, your story. Like I going back to your theater and stuff, it's like you could have done anything in theater. You could have been on stage. You could have done all kinds of things. But you figured out that I like to manage things. I like to project manage. I like to work with people and bring all that together. And there's probably a thread there through everything you've done until you fall upon entrepreneurship, where that's a big part of what we do too, as running businesses, is managing people and managing projects. And so it sounds like you kind of found your thing, your wheelhouse. You didn't want to work for somebody else. Did you enjoy working for other people, or do you think that transition, like going to entrepreneurship, were you comfortable making that transition, working for yourself, or would you, in hindsight, rather work for somebody else? Probably not.
I don't know that I know the answer to that at this point, because it's 14 or 15 years at this point since that transition has happened, and I don't think that there's a term used in the in the entrepreneur world that you probably have heard, unemployable. Like nobody will ever hire me again. It's because I just don't have either the resume, the CV to suggest that I should be hired, right? Or because I have been let out of the cage as an employee, I have taken on new habits that no employer would want to have to deal with. And I think that's probably the bigger issue. So, but to answer your question, I loved being an employee. I loved participating in a group process. And I think that that's often more than being the manager, being the project manager. That's probably the theme throughout my career that I appreciate most, is that I don't like being siloed off from other people. I like the group effort of working together for a common goal.
Right.
And that's happened in every situation that I've been in professionally.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think so. I feel like I'm unemployable at this point too. I don't think McDonald's would hire me. I don't know why. Yeah. But I think about there was a time frame like about 2014 to 18 through 18 that I worked for a corporation. I worked for a company, and I had a job, salary, doing really well. But I felt, I got into that because the co-founder, or one of the co-founders of the company, I knew him, and he talked me into it. And he knew that I'd been in business for myself for years and years. And I like building stuff. I was always doing something. And he's like, well, you'll still be building stuff, but you'll be building stuff for us. You'll still be building products and doing all this stuff. And I just took it as, for me, it was about, I could focus on my craft. I could focus on, not worry about the business side for a while. And it was a nice break. But I learned a lot in that process. But what you said, I really like work. The fact of the matter was I was working with other people, with other teams, and we were building something together. And I think about that even today in my business. Yeah.
There's something that you remind me of in that story. It's not just working with other people, but it's surrounding yourself. And I know, I know of Will. I don't know Will. But also surrounding yourself and working with people who are able to impart more knowledge or who are, I hate to use the term smarter, but who are smarter than you are, because you get to learn. And so surrounding yourself with other people who can impart more knowledge, more experience, and help enhance who you are, I think is also a real benefit to being part of a team.
Yeah, I think, and now we're not, this podcast isn't about me, but it relates to what we're talking about. But yeah, we're talking about is Rapid Crush, and Wilson Matos and Jason Fladlin are the founders, partners. And Will's the one that talked me into it.
I figured that out.
Yeah.
I figured that out.
And but it was part of that was one of the reasons I do not regret it at all is because I was able to work with those guys, their team, and other people. Like Dolan White was the CEO there while I was there. Yeah. And I remained friends with these guys after, but I just learned, being in that environment, I just learned so much. So yeah, those opportunities are great. So those are the situations where you might love working for somebody else for a while, and it's a good thing. So, all right, back to you. So now you're doing entrepreneurship. You're, what was your first foray into that? Like when you had to find, was it in wine, or did you decide?
I thought it would be, but that didn't work out. Remember the part about the failure part?
Yeah.
So I had moved out here, moved my wife and I had moved out here. We had a kid here in Oregon, and then I found myself unemployed, and I had to figure out what to do next. And this was 2010. I was already doing a little bit of dabbling in Facebook ads because it was the hot new thing at that time.
Yeah. And
so I started to do some consulting with local wineries here in Oregon to get them up and running on the Facebook ads train, right? And the thing is, back in 2010, Facebook was still being used by a much younger set of people, right?
right.
We've all grown up with it, and now the college kids don't use it anymore, but that's who was using it at that time. And so convincing wineries that that would be a good platform for them was a real uphill battle. And so you had mentioned something about I've done a couple dozen online courses at this point that I've created. I started doing Udemy courses training people on how to use Facebook ads, and the hidden agenda behind that was I was hoping that people would then say, "This is great. Thanks for teaching me. I don't have time to do this. Would you do it for me?" And I would build a business out of that. And that's exactly what ended up happening.
That's a good approach, right? Yeah.
So yeah, I've had nearly 30,000 students on Udemy. Those courses are still up there, and they're woefully out of date, and I have to remember to take them down. But it brought me a set of clients for my agency that I was not expecting. So I ran an agency. I dabbled in the franchise world. I was solicited by somebody who called themselves a franchise coach, which is basically a salesperson who gets commissioned on making franchise sales, and invested in a brand new franchise startup, and lost all my money and declared personal bankruptcy as a result of that, and ultimately went back to the marketing agency focus full time, which is what's brought me to the work that I do now, where marketing agencies are my clients. But that was sort of and there's lots of other bumps in the road that I haven't shared, but that was basically the transition from the wine business into entrepreneurship.
Through all that, what if you could think of like your biggest lesson through all that, like how you found your way? Like you had some big failures in there. Maybe there's more than one lesson. Like what did you pull out of some of those experiences that kind of inform what you do today?
I think that I have always been a a trusting person, and there was this phrase that I'm sure didn't originate during the Reagan administration, but I remember it from that period of time, which was trust but verify. And I think it's a Soviet saying, but that's something I didn't do enough of, and so I had never been. I'm not suggesting that what I went through was that I was the victim of swindlers, but there was some sketchy stuff in what I was sold or how I was told to go about it in that franchise process that I have taken a lot away from, and I have nothing against the business model, but I do have something against the way that a lot of people in that industry operate. And so that was unfortunate. The other thing, and the reason that I had to declare personal bankruptcy is the vast majority. This is an interesting fact that I did not know, and warn people about now that I've been through this process. The vast majority of the way that franchises are funded are through a redirection of your personal retirement money. So most people who, let's say you transition out of the corporate world and you become a franchise owner, where do you find the money to purchase the franchise, to pay all the fees? It's often a self-directed retirement account. So you take your 401k, you take your whatever your 403b, whatever you had amassed in employment, and then you have your retirement money purchase the business. There's this whole area of law called ERISA that governs how this can happen. And so I had an ERISA attorney take all of my retirement savings and buy the business. And that turned out to be a very bad idea from where things went as a result of the failure of that business. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it could go the other way too. I mean, it could have turned into something golden. Yeah. So that's the risk you take sometimes.
This is true.
You probably, depending on where you are in life, whether you bet the farm or not is a good thing or a bad thing. Burn bridges. Yep. Yeah. All that. Wow. Yeah, so the financial things like that happen are definitely big lessons. Like now you're
Hmm?
probably a little more cautious today or thoughtful about how you're directing your money or if you're even investing your own money or keeping that separate. Like you know what you can risk, but you keep the rest over here. It's working
Yeah.
for you.
No, there's this concept about entrepreneurship, that there's always lessons from mistakes and that
Yeah.
you learn from them, and those things I absolutely learn from and have changed behavior as a result of going down the
Yeah.
wrong path or making the wrong decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's things like that. But so I've had financial situations in the decades. I've had trust and verify situations that I've learned that lesson as well. In fact, I just wrote a recent article about, I was actually in the contracting business for a few years, painting, remodeling, Matt's painting and repair. And that was a rough business. There was some swindlers in that
Yeah.
business. But I feel like it's hard to learn those lessons through a book. Like those are things that are really going to sink deep into you, and it's going to inform what you do today. It hardens you. It sharpens your abilities and how you think about things. Unfortunately, hopefully, though, like things like what you're doing, what we're doing here, maybe can shortcut some of that for some people where they
Yeah.
can learn from us who've been there, done that. And so okay, so let's take that. So how do you help people today? What is your biggest focus now? You say you're back to marketing agencies and, are you still training or are you doing the work for other people or are you consulting? What are you doing right now?
Yeah, I'm out of the marketing services business, so
Okay.
I'm not doing stuff for people, except when you ask really nicely and I like you a lot. I'm not going to do
I
it.
got a big check.
So like I don't want to tell you this, but because this is your space, but I just built a website for somebody, right?
It's
But
okay.
sorry,
That's
I
okay.
could have been your client, but no.
That's it. This conversation's
Um,
over. I'm talking to my
but
competition. I'm out of
but
here.
yeah, I do very, very little in terms of marketing services, but it's also helpful for me to stay in the game in
Yes.
terms of directly working with businesses. And I've found a really nice balance, which is that I do very little of it, but I do enough to keep aware of the way that uh, interactions occur with a business owner, the mindset and the perspective of business owners as we're going through what we in the marketing world know are massive changes, but they're totally unaware of what we know. And so how does that get communicated? How do they get educated? What are the things that they're hearing as the priorities that the nephew or the kid down the street or the competitor turn them on to, that they're going to ask questions about. So that's that. To that extent, I'm sort of aware, keeping my finger on the pulse, actively engaged with some of the business organizations here in Portland. I'm involved with an organization called the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, which is sort of the hub of the construction and development industry, where a lot of the major general contractors on building projects and all of the subcontractors who want to do the work with them and all of us who want to support all of those businesses congregate. And I'm actively involved in that. But the main focus, back to the question you asked like 7 minutes ago before I went off on this tangent, is working with marketing agencies and marketing service providers to help them focus their efforts beyond what most people will traditionally think of as marketing activities. And that's, really because of a few problems that I've observed in the marketing services world. One is that most of the services that get sold to businesses, particularly in the SMB space, are the wrong solution for whatever problem may be the business may be encountering, right? But it's all that the marketer happens to sell. So rather than pass up the opportunity to make a sale, they'll find a way to make a square peg fit in a round
Right,
hole.
right.
And that's just inherent in the way that the industry came about. It's very much siloed, so that the marketing solution is sold as, from go back to like newspaper or radio sales reps. All they sell are ad space in their whatever space, space that they're selling it.
Yeah.
And that's the same for most marketing service providers, right? I'm not going to pick on website design, but I'll pick on my old world of Facebook or Meta ads, right? If you're an agency that specializes in that,
That's
well,
what you're selling.
anybody who you think is a prospect, that's what you're selling them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that may or may not be the right solution, the best solution. And so what I got really interested in was two things. How do we get the right solution into the business in the first place to address their underlying needs of increasing and retaining revenue? How do we find better alignment with the range of marketing and business development options that are out there? And how do we improve the value of that service provider to the business to be able to ultimately help them, not with lead generation or engagement on social media or all of the sort of slivers of the big picture problem, but actually advise them through figuring out strategically what to do to address bigger issues in the business. And so over about 4 years, my business partner and I, he was an agency owner of his own business, and we got together and we decided, let's figure out how to reposition our agencies as marketing strategy consulting. And so we changed our offer completely. Instead of doing services, we would guide our clients through a decision-making, strategic planning process. And out the other side, there were all these decisions that were better informed about what to do, some of which we had expertise in, some of which we went and found a partner who had expertise in, some of which we went to the business and said, why don't we find somebody on your team who can execute on this? But we had a much bigger purpose as it related to the impact that we could make inside the business and where we were helping them. And so that's what I do now, is train others to reposition their focus around bigger picture solutions.
That sounds like a really, really important piece to this whole thing. Like almost like you're kind of not the general contractor, but you're the guy that's going to go in and be like, these are the things, this is how we're going to build the building. These are the blueprints. This is how we're going to build it. And then you pull the pieces together for them. Then you can think about, okay, you want Facebook ads, here's your guy, or we can do it in-house. Mm-hmm. But it's also having that ability to pull in have other partnerships and stuff. And it's the same thing in the web design business. Like, I'm not going to do videography, but I know a guy, but we may work on the same project. We may help that same business, but we're going to pull in other pieces to, other expertise. That sounds like kind of what you're doing. Did I sum it up right?
Yeah. I think businesses have never really thought about marketing the same way they think about so much of the other stuff that they have to deal with. Their operations, their management of financial stuff, their legal or insurance issues. And for almost all of those areas, operations they may or may not, they have professional advisors to guide them through that process, to step back and look at the big picture and say, what's the best path forward? And in the marketing or revenue management, world, we don't have that in the SMB space. In the corporate world, there is this entire industry called revenue operations, RevOps. But for small business, there really isn't such a thing. And so we're taking a page out of what the enterprise organizations do when it comes to how do we address systems and process and operations that support the way revenue comes into the business and the way that revenue is retained in a business, and how do we build out systems? So it's a very different way of thinking about marketing, and we're very much expanding our definition of what we think a marketing service provider can do. Well, I actually like to get rid of the word marketing and I get rid of the word services and totally reposition our folks as trusted, revenue growth advisors or something along those lines. I change it up every time I say it, so I'm not sure what I'm rebranding them today.
You'll land eventually on something.
Yeah,
that sounds good. So why do you think it is that smaller businesses have struggled in this area? Like why they can't, because we have, like I said, I mean, like project management and in other parts of your business, seems like it's a no-brainer, but is it because marketing is more abstract? It's harder to, or sales or revenue related?
I happen to have this book that's staring at me in the face because I was just telling somebody else about it, and you may or may not be a fan of it. It's Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened to the original E-Myth, but for some reason, when it got reissued, it got called Revisited. And the entire premise of this book is really what we do in the marketing space. It's businesses in the small business space are established around the thing they do. And therefore, the people who are operating them tend to focus on the technical aspect of what they're delivering, mm-hmm. or, some other characteristic of the business outside of being a business owner. So they're not thinking about how do I manage, how do I grow, how do I expand a business. They're working, as Michael Gerber put it years ago in I think the late 70s when he first started talking about this, they're working in the business, not on the business. And I think that is sort of common, much, much, much more common in the small business space, is that they're not stepping back, they're not setting time aside to do strategic thinking about what are we actually trying to accomplish. They're in the moment, reactive, not proactive, etc.
That makes a lot of sense, and you can see how that happens. Sometimes when somebody starts a business, they have a craft or something they want to do, they're good at, and they just dive in and try to get business, and they're not thinking about it as a business. Because it's even for my agency, I have to think about things almost as departments, right? Like I got the marketing, even though we got business, even though I know I'm doing some project management, I've got the team going on, we're getting stuff done, we're in a continuous state of doing stuff, doing our craft and delivering services and talking to clients and all that stuff. At the same time, I have to have this part of my brain that's, okay, what do we have a marketing piece. Why are we doing the content we're doing? Why are we, and how are we doing that? How are we delivering that content every day? Who's helping me with that? What's that team look like? And that's always happened, even though we're doing all this other stuff. And then it's the other pieces. But yeah. And so I could see that one of probably the first things that you have to overcome is, or try to convince somebody, is that they have to start thinking about this stuff. This is the missing piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I'll say, so we're training marketers who are in this bad habit of focusing on the thing that they happen to focus on, right? How to think and behave very differently and create new habits. That's tough, mm-hmm. right? But then we have to also connect with business owners and help them create new process. Mm. So let's think about this. I can teach my folks, the marketers who are going to reach out to businesses, to go after people who they have to convince and educate, or I can teach my folks to go find evidence that a business is already trying to accomplish what you can help them with, and that you can get them there faster. Which is the better prospect for them? It's the latter, right? And so how do we then engage with those folks? What is the evidence we look for? What is the discussion like that gets them to say, oh, I want this. Where have you been all my life? And that's really what we're focused on. Now, that is an example of the type of strategic approach that we take that most businesses don't, right? They go, all right, well, I got this great thing. There's people who are going to want it. I'm going to go out and convince everybody that it's great and that they should have it. And you waste a lot of time. That is the type of thing that happens a lot in business that we're trying to help fight against.
So you're here's the question. What is strategy? Well, I mean, how do you define it? Like, what are the things that we do in our business that's strategy?
So I was at a presentation on strategy, and it was a corporate audience, and there was a consulting group, I think based in DC, that had created this beautiful visual that's available in a book that they published called The Primes. And we have been talking about strategy based on that visual ever since. And I want to be conscious that we're probably up, on our time. So I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. But
I still want to talk about AI yet.
All right.
We got some time. I got some time.
Maybe we'll get to that today. Otherwise, I'll force you to find another date on your calendar to have me back. So here's the visual. Okay, and again, it's the book is called The Primes, and it's these visualizations of different business frameworks and concepts. So there's a triangle on the bottom, and then there's a giant oval, kind of an egg shape that is balancing on top of that triangle. Okay. The triangle is what's at stake. Okay. The oval is the environment that we find ourselves in, the external environment of what is going on in the market, what is the demand, what is the competition, the internal environment in terms of what is your organizational's capability, capacity, etc. And then there's the question inside this oval. There's two terms in there. There's the current state, as is, and there's the future state, to be. And then between those, there's this squiggly line with an arrow right at the end of it, which is strategy. Get moving from the as is current state to the future state, the to be state. But that line is squiggly because you got to kind of try a whole bunch of tactics to get from where you are to where you want to go. Mindful that you're dealing with the environment internally and externally that is, handed to you, and that there's something at stake that you got to figure out, is this worth doing? Is it not worth doing? That is how we have come to discuss strategy in my world, which is that there's a lot that influences what we actually are aiming to do to get from the current to the future state.
So it's not just a straight path. When you set your strategy and you just go right.
Yeah. Well, so let me just continue this concept by sharing another visual, and this is an easier visual for everybody to understand. You know that Indiana Jones movie where there's the bridge and he has to run across the bridge and he's being chased on one side and the bridge is like falling apart, right? Well, think of the rungs on that bridge, right, as the tactics, right? The strategy is the bridge. Some of those tactics
are going to be
are worth trying, but they don't work. Some of them are solid and will help him advance across the bridge. That's how I like to think about it in terms of that squiggly line is also that bridge, right? Some things are going to work, some things are not. Some things are precarious but get us where we need to go, and some we should never even bother touching in the first place. But as long as we're looking at those tactics in the context of the bigger strategy, they're worth considering.
Right. So you're not just blindly choosing a tactic and trying that thing because somebody said that's a good thing to do. You're doing it in context of your vision, where you want to go, where you're headed on that bridge. But within the core of all that, you have to be able to test. You have to be willing to test these things and decide, okay, well, this looks promising. Let's try that for a little while. Maybe depending on what it is, the time frame would be considered. But Yeah, and I relating to my business is the same thing. Like what we're always trying new things. We found the things that work for us. Now, as I communicate to my team, the person that helps me with marketing, like what you're doing is working. So that's our baseline. So we figured out this works. And then we keep trying other things and hoping there's something else that we can snap onto it eventually. And that's how you eventually get to hopefully your end goal. That's a good way to visualize it. I like that. I like that a lot. Wish they could make another good movie like that we could.
I didn't love the last couple of Indiana Jones movies, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's
they knew they could make money at it. Well, I don't even know if they made money at it, but they weren't very good. I don't even think I saw the last one. Anyway, we're off course. So one of the things though that you talk about external things that influence. And one of the big, I'm going to segue right into this. Watch this. One of is AI an example of one of those things that just this thing that all of a sudden we have to deal with that's going to change what we think, how we think about our tactics, and and how does that affect our strategy? Because now suddenly we have this, was it a gorilla or an elephant in the room? Something's in the room where it's like, do I need to be paying attention to this? How do you think about AI and how that fits into strategy and stuff today?
Well, I think whenever you're dealing with new technology that is being introduced en masse, and you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, are my competitors using it? If I use it, does it give me the edge? In terms of my place in the market, or an advantage in terms of what I can produce in terms of efficiency or benefit to my customer, right? And this happened back when we started to adopt, the internet. This happened probably back with any major communication changes that we had. So, I was talking about fax machines and answering machines earlier.
Yeah.
Think about the advent of and widespread availability of telephony, right? These things do shift the way that we operate, and AI is just the latest one, and it's happening really fast.
Seems more significant than some other ones.
Well, I would say it actually doesn't feel as significant to the vast majority of business owners I'm talking to right now. They're like, oh yeah, I heard about that thing. I tried that chat, whatever that name of that thing is. It doesn't really do anything. It's not useful to me. And they move on. And so for those of us who are hyper aware of everything that's happening in this space, we're like, what the heck? How
are they
have
missing
that reaction? Yes, but there's going to be a period of adoption that we're going to go through, just the way that there was this period of adoption for, are you wired for telephone yet? Right? That those places that had it, they're like, this is miraculous. I can advance my sales that much quicker. I don't have to spend days on the road traveling someplace. And so there is this significant shift that I think is going to impact all of us in lots of ways beyond just access to the tools, to the technology. But we're certainly in early days here in the spring of 2024 when we're recording this, that we don't have a clear sense of what a year from now is going to look like, simply because of the speed at which this stuff is moving.
Yeah.
But I would say that looking at some of the foundational concepts that we've been talking about in this conversation, that this technology gives any business, any advisor to a business, access to a tool that can help you do things better, faster, cheaper, and have access not just to the technology, but to what the technology can allow us to do in a way that we've not been able to before. So let me, for those of us in the marketing space, let me speak to the way that I see this shift happening. Back when we started having access to the kinds of targeting in ads that we could do with Google, or we could do with Facebook or Meta, and dial in the specificity of who we wanted to get our message in front of. That was a capability that had already existed at the enterprise level. But the average small business did not have access to that, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing a similar kind of mass accessibility to something now that can help advance a small business in a way that technology and advertising did, a decade plus ago.
So it's enabling smaller businesses to compete with or have the same capabilities as larger companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the strategic planning conversation we were just having, right? How do I project and consider various permutations of what I should do or what direction I should go or how to achieve that to be future state that I want to? Well, I can ask AI, guide me through this consideration process and give me a whole bunch of different scenarios and lay them out and then help me judge them one against another based on these priorities, these principles. That is something you certainly could historically have worked through, having somebody guide you through the conversation, doing a lot of research, having to try to, sort of figure all of that stuff out based on input from lots of different sources. And now we can do that in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think I use it quite a bit, but a big part of that's what just brainstorming, right? It's having a tool that you can just, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Can you help me get there? And it helps you step through it. It'll give you some information. You stem off of that and you're like, okay, now let's take this concept. Okay, that's a good idea. And you keep asking and iterating, and eventually you come up with whatever it is you're focused on coming up with. But yeah, I think one of the things that I didn't talk to other even AI experts is that it's allowing small businesses to do more and just do things better, do more with less. And it's like, 5 years from now, you're not going to need your 30-person team today, but you might only need 5 people because you're going to have AI agents doing a lot of the stuff, a lot of the legwork and the other, things that, or you have a 5-person team today and you're just going to be able to act like a 30-person team 5 years from now. It's because you could do so much more.
And by the way, I like to endorse the second scenario a lot more than the first one, because I think that ultimately there is this unfounded fear about loss of jobs when it really should be a consideration of how can we add capability and capacity with the team that we have.
Good point.
And that if you look at it through the right lens, you actually have a better outcome.
Yeah.
It's a short-term thinking when it's like, how can we save money and fire a bunch of people?
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's why even my team, I'm always encouraging them to use these tools. I'm trying to get them to use these tools. So, even give them access.
So in 2023, I did 48 presentations around the globe. I like to say, although most of them were virtually from this office, on the topic of AI for small and medium business. And I had audiences, particularly in Europe, who were just totally against it, the idea of this being a good idea for them to even go down the path. And they were either saying, we're going to ignore this because it's just a blip and we don't believe that this is something that we need to waste our time or energy with, or this isn't relevant to us, or they misunderstood where the value was.
Right.
And so one of the big takeaways I got from doing that, I actually did a presentation on what I learned from presenting to thousands of business owners and entrepreneurs. One of the big takeaways I got was that because there's not a clear strategic thinking in business today, the immediate kinds of questions that I got after my presentations, people would come to me and say, hey, thanks so much. This was great. I just discovered this really cool tool, right? And there's thousands of them. If you go to, one of these AI aggregation sites, like there's an AI for that.com, there's 12, 13,000 things listed there. Right. Ridiculous. Most of those things are not going to exist a year from now because there's no need for them to exist.
Right.
Except that a lot of the entrepreneurial minds out there see one of these tools and go, I'm going to start a whole new direction of my business, or a whole new business based on the capabilities of this cool little tool I found. And my answer is, what are the problems, challenges that you're dealing with in your business right now that you could look at this technology and say, how could we solve those problems? Wouldn't that be a worthwhile application? And so that's an educational process I think we have to go through right now. Mm-hmm. The other thing is internally, maybe there's a proponent in an organization to embrace AI, but there's resistance in the team. And so a lot of the stuff that I've ended up doing as a result of going out and speaking on this topic has been coming into small organizations and doing team workshops on how do we make this something that everybody's embracing. Mildred in accounting, who was fighting from having to move to Excel to QuickBooks, is even going to love this once she sees how it can benefit her.
Yeah.
Right. That's the kind of stuff that I'm spending a lot of time on right now, because once we can get an organization past the blockage points like that, we can do great things in terms of how do we get everybody rowing in the same direction using these tools and building on the capabilities or the opportunities that exist here.
I love it. That is a great place to land. No, it's amazing. There's yeah. I'm going to stop talking about AI because I'm just going to keep going otherwise. But no, you made some really, really good points. And I love the point about, not firing people because of AI, but just doing more with what you got. That was great. So you help people in a number of different ways, a couple different ways, at least. If somebody wants to reach out to you, get your help, what's the best way for them to find you? I think we mentioned a website early on, or a company, an agency, or where can they find you on the World Wide Web? Are you hanging out on LinkedIn? Where are you?
I don't spend much time on social media if I can avoid it, except I do post on LinkedIn because that gets the awareness out. But the place that I can be found most easily, and it's the central hub where you can find all of my activities, is David Baer. That's BAER.me. So davidbaer.me.
Perfect. That was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything. It's in one spot. Don't make it complicated.
I'm a marketer. I want to make sure that I can shepherd now.
I love it.
I could tell them what the next step is. I have learned a lot about how to close on the end of a webinar from Jason, and I should walk them step by step through what to do once they hit that page. But I'm not going to.
Yeah, let's skip that part. We'll do it. It's okay to do it wrong here. This is a podcast. Yep. Okay. Thanks for joining us, David Baer. It's a real pleasure, and thanks for sharing your experiences and knowledge, and it was very inspiring. Appreciate it. Till next time.
Hey, Matt, this has been Ball. Thank you.
You bet. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you're interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.